Hey everyone, Paige Kornblue here, and we are joined by Jay Feely, CBS analyst and former NFL kicker. How many seasons, Jay? 14?
14, yeah.
14, several teams.
We go way back though. We go back before that, all the way back to college when I was in college with your brother.
That's right. That's what I like to say. I know Jay as another one of my big brother figures who kept an eye on me, the little Kornblue running around at Michigan, right?
Exactly.
You guys were part of that kicking crew for the Wolverines. Some amazing years there.
A lot of fun. We knew Tom Brady when he was just Tommy. He wasn't Tom Brady yet.
Yes. Okay. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. But speaking of Brady, big week, quite a matchup. What are your thoughts going into this Super Bowl? Unprecedented in many ways.
You know, it really is. It's probably one of the best quarterback matchups of all time in Super Bowl history. I think back to when I was young with Joe Montana and Dan Marino. It was Dan Marino's second year. And, you know, you had two of the legendary quarterbacks going head to head. And that's what you have here, you know, and it's very similar. You have the greatest of all time. A lot of people talk about Joe Montana being the greatest of all time, and Dan Marino was the up-and-comer trying to, you know, the most talented one. Well, that's what you have. You have Tom Brady now, who's won 6 Super Bowls and been to 10 now, and he is the greatest of all time against what people think is the future. And I think Patrick Mahomes will be in that conversation as he continues to go, if he stays healthy, and because he's so talented. He's probably the most talented player at that position ever. When you think about his arm strength, his ability to make throws off schedule, his legs, and what he can do to beat you, and then you combine the mental acumen. He's so smart, and he's got really unbelievable recall. You know, and Andy Reid talks about how, you know, he's got a photographic memory, and so all those things. You know, you look at Patrick Mahomes, you think he's going to continue to be right there competing for the Super Bowl every year, and he's got a couple of coaches who are very, very creative. And they find all kinds of different ways to utilize his talent. So it's a fascinating matchup, and one at CBS we're super glad to have.
Oh, I bet. I mean, I was reading, I think Mahomes was 5 when Brady started. I mean, something like that. When he started his career.
In Brady's first year, you know, Mahomes was 5. Yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Well, the young guys now are closer to my son's age than they are to Tom's age. You know, I mean, that's because he's played so long. You know, the guy's 43 years old. Give it up. Move on to something else, you know.
Oh, he won't. No, not yet. How are you going to prepare for this game? You've obviously done some big games before. Take us through just kind of some of the sideline reporting.
I'm just going to wing it. I'm just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna walk on there, and hey, there's a couple 100 million people on there watching. You know, it'll be fun for me. The Tampa Stadium, Raymond James Stadium, is less than a mile from my high school, Tampa Jesuit, where I went to high school, and so I get to go home, and a lot of my family still lives there. My brothers, my parents, and a lot of memories back there. And being able to do the Super Bowl back in your hometown, to have one of your best friends who gets to quarterback that team. You know, is pretty special. You know, so there's just a lot of things that I always wanted to play in the game back in Tampa. And whenever I got to play in Tampa, it was always special. Never got to play in the Super Bowl, but to be able to broadcast it, my 3rd time with CBS doing the Super Bowl. So it's pretty cool.
You talk about Brady, one of your best friends. You were a groomsman in his wedding, right?
He was a groomsman in my wedding.
In your wedding. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
And
so,
I mean,
how about those bridesmaids that have the pictures still of like when he was the groomsman in that wedding? I think he actually, I want to say, I think he caught the garter belt when we threw it too.
Those are some good photos, I bet.
That's
quite
right.
keepers.
Yeah.
Tell us about, you know, Tom. I mean, what I always tell people is from what I remember at Michigan. I mean, he is that guy, that genuine guy. But
he hasn't changed.
So close.
You know, he certainly hasn't changed. His circle is small, and he cares about his family, and he protects that time. But he's the kind of guy who tells you he loves you. You know, and a lot of guys won't do that. And he's kind of challenged me in that way. Just, you know, not verbally, but just watching, like, hey, tell the people you care about that you love them. You know, don't be shy to do that. And, you know, even with people who aren't friend or aren't family, you know, just your friends. And, you know, I've tried to do that more in my life. And, you know, he's the kind of guy that even back then, he was the greatest competitor I'd ever been around. You know, like he wanted to beat you in everything, whether it was golf or pool or backgammon. Like I've seen him throw a backgammon board, across the room because he was mad that he was losing, and that's why at 43 years old, he's still willing to put in the work and still willing to, do 2 hours of body work with Alex daily to have his body ready. And he still wants to put in the effort to study and to understand what teams are going to do and to be, to perform at the highest level, which is even harder now that he's 43. I mean, mentally it's easier, but physically it's certainly harder.
Yeah, I remember back at Michigan, you guys, I'm pretty sure you competed in these. I know Brandon and Tom did. In the weekends, these ping pong tournaments, you scheduled your own competitions, putt.
He and I worked at the University of Michigan course together. There was a bunch of us who worked there, and we would play afterwards, and the loser had to buy Olive Garden. That was our big bet. You had the all you can eat salads and bread, and that meant a lot when you were in college. And so that was always our big bet. Like, the loser had to buy Olive Garden.
Gosh. Oh, so such fun. And now look at you, you're down there on the sidelines reporting on another one yet of his big games, the big Super Bowl games. There's some other players I'm sure you've known through the years that come in and out. That must be such fun to be able to continue to work with all these guys.
Well, that's what I enjoyed the most playing, and what I miss the most when you're done is the relationships, and when you're done, it's like, boom, it's over. I think for a lot of guys, that's the hardest thing, because all of a sudden you're not in that locker room. You're not hanging out daily. You're not, when you're playing, you go to dinner together, you go golf together, you do things with your wives together, your families, your kids, and all of a sudden that door is closed. And so by broadcasting, it's kind of open still. You get to go to some of the games, you get to see some of the people that you knew, the coaches, the owners, a lot of the players, and then you have your own team that you broadcast with. And this year was a little different because of COVID. You're not going to dinner. You're basically sitting in the hotel room every weekend, not doing anything. You go there, you take your COVID test, and then you do all your Zoom meetings, and you sit in the hotel room until you go to the stadium and do the game. So it's a little different this year, but certainly has that same feel. You have your team and you have that camaraderie.
How do you think the pandemic has impacted these players, the coaches? What have you seen this past year?
Well, they had a lot of sacrifices. They had to take COVID tests every single day, and they had to restrict who they were around. I mean, you talk to these, especially throughout the playoffs. The last thing you want is to get tested positive for COVID and not be there for your team. And so, their families, the kids, their wives, they had to ask their wives, hey, don't go out with your friends, don't allow the kids to go out and do sleepovers with their friends, because you don't want them to come back in and bring that virus back in, and then you test positive, not be able to be there, for your teammates. And so it's not just the players and the coaches that had to make a lot of sacrifice. It's their families as well, their kids and their spouses, and relatives and friends who normally would want to come to that game and want to come stay at your house. And you're like, hey, you can't come this year. We have to be a little smarter, and certainly everybody's done that around the world. It's not isolated to the NFL, but it's definitely been different this year.
Jay, you're such a good family man. Your beautiful wife, Rebecca, you've been with forever, I feel like, and you have right? College sweethearts.
That's right.
4 beautiful kids, your soccer coach to your
high school girls coach. Yeah.
This
is my 6th year doing that. So it's a lot of fun. And I've only had like 3 girls cry this year during the season. So that's a good thing.
What are from your experiences, what are some of the messages you share with those girls through the soccer season?
Well, the funny thing, one time I asked him, hey, you guys know who Bill Belichick was? And not a single person on my team knew who Bill Belichick was. I did bet him one time. I said, okay, if we win this game, I'll let you go through my phone and you can call anybody you want on the way home from the game. And they won the game. Now, I knew like who they were going to pick. I think they picked Brady, and they called. I knew he wasn't going to answer, like I usually text him, we'll set up, but it was just kind of fun to let him do that. But for me, the messages are always about, people don't talk about failure enough. And I think young kids in general, in our society in general, everything's going to be good. And we build our kids up, and we always talk to them, oh, you're great, you have great potential, all this stuff. But people don't talk about failure, and that's life. You're going to fail. You're going to go after something. You're going to try to succeed. It's not going to happen. You're going to have a dream that doesn't come to fruition. You're going to go after a job, and maybe you get fired from a job. And so I talked to them a lot about that. And I talked to them about, where that balance has to come from, and having a faith and having a foundation, and, how that's real life. And a lot of your greatest successes come out of your failures. And so, I try to be very transparent with them about that, and about discipline. Like, there's all kinds of things in life that take no talent that lead to success. Being on time, working hard, all being disciplined, all those things that don't take any talent at all, but that too few people do them. And those are, you look at Tom Brady, he wasn't the most talented. He wasn't the best really at any level. No one's ever said, oh, Tom Brady, greatest arm. Oh, Tom Brady, he's the fastest. Oh, no, he just worked hard as he possibly could to make himself the very best. He did all the little things along the way to make himself the best. That's the kind of message that I try and send to my girls.
Exactly. And he's still doing it, right? Yeah.
He is. It's unbelievable.
and sharing it with everyone else, which is just awesome. How about something from Michigan? There's some messages and things you learned that you've kind of applied throughout your life. I know you guys are such good Michigan men.
Yeah. I think what was special about Michigan is that, the expectation was for the position. They always talked about that it didn't matter which player it was, the expectation didn't change. And I think part of that is being devoted to something greater than yourself. The program at Michigan was bigger than any individual, and so you had to be committed to something that was greater than yourself. I think I've taken that and applied it to my life. Like, I've tried to be committed to things that were bigger than myself, that were bigger than even my family, try to find things that I cared about, that I could live for, and for me, that meant having an impact on people's lives. And I try to continue to do that on a daily basis. Okay, how can I positively impact somebody's life? And, just this past week, a young man that I met in Haiti 7 years ago, and I know Brandon has been down there, your brother has been down there before as well. I met him when he was homeless in Haiti after the earthquake. He came up here, he didn't make excuses, he found a way. He lived with us for a while. He found a way to get a college degree. He's getting his MBA right now. He just bought a house here with his wife this past week. I mean, it's just an unbelievable story of opportunity and really the American dream. But what stood out to me about him was that he didn't make any excuses. Like, he spoke English as a second language. He wasn't going to, have all these opportunities, but he's going to find a way regardless. And he just worked harder than everybody else. And, those are the kind of things that I've committed my life to.
Yeah. And a couple other things that I've seen lately that you've been involved in and had your hand in. DIPG, the Chad Tough DIPG, you supported them through many years. For those of you that don't know, DIPG is a really aggressive, difficult to fight brain tumors and cancer, especially in children.
0% survival rate, which that's the toughest part about it, and unfortunately, Brandon and I, had two teammates whose sons died of DIPG at Michigan. And, when you have teammates that you love, that you care about, and you see their son die of something, and as a father, just like how awful that would be to not be able to do anything for your son and to watch them pass away, it hits home. And so I've always been like, anything I can do to help. And there's a young man that I met through the Chad Tough Foundation who is fighting DIPG right now, is a huge Chiefs fan. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine, Anthony Sherman, who's the fullback for the Chiefs. And I told him the story. And I really asked him, Paige, to go to Patrick Mahomes or to the Hunt family and see if they could do something to get him tickets. And he basically just said, no, I'm going to do it. So he donated 2 tickets, and I'm able to get that young man and his father to go to the game. Wheels Up donated a plane, so they're getting to fly down there, and it should be a really special weekend for them.
Oh, I hope those are the best 2 seats in the house. You see to that, Jay, right? Wow, that's awesome. And then also this year, the COVID relief for the first responders, something you were participating in heavily.
Well, it was something my son and I just kind of decided to do back in March. And, you sit there and you say, okay, what can we do? We're sitting at home, and you look at all the nurses and the doctors who are daily putting their lives on the line. And then at the same time, you're looking at all the local businesses who had to shut down, and you felt for them. And so we just kind of brought the two of them together, and we just said, you know what, let's go and we'll buy meals from those businesses, and we'll bring them to the hospitals and just say thank you. And, something that Jason and I did together. It was kind of cool to do that with your son. And and just special to be able to come and say thank you. And it really kind of struck us just how grateful those nurses and doctors were. I mean, we're just giving them a meal, and yet they were grateful that somebody was saying thank you. And I think that's something else that we don't do enough, probably in our country, is tell people that we're grateful for what they do.
Yes. And Jace, kicking runs in your family. Your dad, and he's kicking. He's on his way.
He is
collegiate world now.
He is. Wednesday is signing day, so it should be a fun day to kind of figure out in the next couple of days where he's going to go and where his future goes. I remember vividly that day for myself, picking Michigan from Tampa, leaving. I had no idea much about Michigan. Unlike your brother who loved Michigan because of your dad,
yes.
And you, I didn't know anything about the history of Michigan. I didn't even know Michigan Ohio State was a big game, when I chose to go there. But I left and went 2,000 miles away, and I just remember how special that day was. So to be able to do that with your son will be pretty cool.
Yes. Well, our very best to him. I know he's going places too. Quite a young man.
He's a lot taller than Brandon and I. He's got the height. Yeah. He got that from his mom.
Than all of us. Oh, that's awesome. Well, hey, have so much fun this week. We will all be watching you. We'll watch you from the sideline. I hope to see you on the Kornblue kicking field and in the big house too.
All right. Sounds good, Paige. Take care.
Go Blue. Take care, Jay.